another episode of the DJ Spotlight here on Disc Jockey News TV. Today I am joined by the wonderful Joel West. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me all the way from Vancouver, Canada.
Yes, so amazing. And it's actually super hot there right now, hey?
It is boiling. Now I've turned the fans down so that you don't pick up the background noise. So you might get a little bit of a glisten right here, but I'm going to be drinking water. You can drink water right along with me. Yes. Stay hydrated.
Hydrated. Well, if you guys don't know, this incredibly talented DJ is also a producer, a curator. You may have heard of Groundwerk Vancouver. Also, he is co-founder of this and Groundwerk Recordings. It's a monthly producer meetup and listening party. Joel also hosts the Groundwerk panel at Base Coast in 2016 on building community in the electronic underground scene, which I would love to touch on today because you have so much great information on the topic. So there are many more accomplishments under his belt that we'll dive into in this interview, but I want to hear about your early beginnings, Joel. Can you tell us a bit about your introduction into the industry up until the present date?
Sure. Some of my earliest memories are actually waking up really early in the morning before my parents were up and putting music on. And I think I was wearing like Spider-Man underwear or something and dancing on the couch, like just getting up and dancing around the living room like this, as you do as a kid. Yeah. Maybe you've seen your kids do it. So I'd say that was my introduction to music and the industry. Once you're hooked, you're hooked. But it took me a while to actually turn it into my life. I guess leaving for post-secondary school, I went to Montreal to go to school, and there was an introduction there to electronic music. And in particular, I remember going out to a club named Sona one night and not even knowing there was a big room until I was leaving at the end of the night, and then opened the doors to the big room and went, okay, this is what I want to do. Yeah, and I'd been to some smaller raves, or late night events in the rural BC where I'm from, but I never really experienced what it is to do that in a city. That really opened my eyes. The jump for me was probably as a preteen, like metal and grunge into hip hop, Wu-Tang Clan and Tribe Called Quest and that kind of era, Pete Rock, that kind of era, which led me into jazz, which transitioned nicely into Saint Germain and Moby as I hit post-secondary school. And then I started buying records, and then I bought turntables actually after that, in about 2003. And within about 6 months, a year, was playing out for money. So from there, it's been a long and fun trek to get here. But it's really in the last couple of years that it's accelerated for me. It's always kind of been something I do. It's part of what I do. I really enjoy doing it. I've been a local and regional guy. But it's really in this last couple of years that maybe all the little things you pick up over time kind of congeal at some point. And it feels like in the last maybe 3 to 5 years, that's what's been happening.
That's really interesting. It's almost like just this natural progression of your branding, and you almost just have to experiment with different types of music and scenes until you figure out, hey, this is who I am, or this is just where I'm at this point in my career. The Groundwerk listening parties, can you tell me a bit about how that came to be and what amazing things have happened since?
A lot of amazing things, and not just for me. In fact, that's what's been so special about it, is that not only has it developed me, it's developed everyone around me, and it's developed now created opportunities and synchronicities and a meeting place for people that I don't even interact with. They just come and they interact with each other. And there's this whole kind of momentum and percolation and energy. It's time for the percolator that happens around it. So that's really incredible. Where it came from, I started DJing. It was still vinyl. Final Scratch was just coming out. Richie Houghton had just been part of launching Final Scratch. So it was the first digital vinyl system that I'm aware of. I skipped CDJs and went like CDs, actual CDs, and went right to Serato in about 2007, 2008. But I started DJing in the vinyl days, and so you would go and pick up records at the record store. And that was our social space. That's where you would chat with people. That's where you would make your friends. That's where you would meet people. That's where you would get the gossip. That's where you would network. That's where you would get gigs. And as much as it was about the music, it was really about getting to know each other, because we were usually there around the same times when the records came in. As those spaces evaporated, as much as a blessing as digital has been, I love carrying a USB. Maybe I can show you. It's about that big now, right? And I've got how many hundreds of hours of music on there. My back loves that. I actually have my record case sitting right here, and I don't miss lugging that around, although I do love the feel of vinyl. So that social space evaporated for us, yeah, with the advent and the rise of digital music, which created the blessing of being able to connect globally, the blessing of being able to write your music, master it yourself, have it, burn it and or bounce it and put it on your USB and play it out that night. I've done that now. Couldn't really do that with a record. But what we lose, we've got a little bit of that here because we have video and audio, and you can see me, you can see my gestures, you can see my facial expression, but we lose the connection, the human connection. So Groundwerk came from me realizing, moving back to Vancouver 6 years ago and spending about 2 years feeling very isolated and lonely in Vancouver because I was starting over again. I didn't really have my networks built up. I just left a place where I had networks. I was throwing shows. I had a radio show. I was connected. I was in there. I was doing it. And I came here and I kind of had to start again. And I had some friends in Calgary, Isis Graham, Esset, who was part of initiating Studio Social out of Habitat. And I knew a few of those people from playing Fozzy Fest because there was a BC Alberta crossover there. I played that festival for 6 years. And I quickly saw that pool of people, their music started to get better fast, or like it started to level up pretty quickly. And then I also saw them kind of a lot of chatter around them. Like all of a sudden there's a little bit of heat going on in a way that I hadn't seen before online. And so I was like, okay, they've got this, this place where they meet. They've created this social space. And I'm not the smartest guy. So for about 6 months, I was like, I wish I could go to Calgary. I wish I had that here. I want to go out there. I want to see all them. I want to be part of that. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, maybe someone should do that here. And I was like, oh, maybe that could be me.
Yeah.
So I actually called Isis Graham up and said, can I ask you some questions? Can I have your blessing to kind of model something after what you're doing? And she said, sure. And she was so generous. So I owe a huge debt of gratitude and thank you for inspiration and for help. She's an incredible person and one of my favorite DJs, to Isis Graham / Esset out of Calgary. And right. Yeah. And Substation. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really funny how small this is. I need to go back on that. I met Isis Graham in a record store in Toronto where I just I was starting to DJ at the Drake Hotel. Starting a little soon after that, I DJ'd at System Sound Bar. And I met her at Sneak Beats on Queen Street, which is DJ Sneak's shop in Toronto. And that's where I went to shop for records. And she was in there shopping with Dom G at the time because she was in to play NASA Dance Pub. And my friend Raul introduced us because he knew them somehow. And he was from Toronto. And then I went and saw her play at NASA that night. And then I got a residency at NASA out of going that night. And then, flash forward 10 years later, and we're interacting in this way. I'm now one of the resident moderators at AIMCon, which Isis Graham is a co-founder of, with Andrew Williams. And I'm about to release music on my friend Raul's new label, Coete, out of Toronto. So it's like, that social space is so key, and that came out of the record shop, right? So that's what this Groundwerk thing is, these monthly get-togethers that get us usually about 70 to 90 people every month, which is pretty good for a Wednesday night for kind of a nerdy producers meetup. We've been going 3 years, we're 30 events deep, and we've given first listens to, I think the number is 675 new songs.
Nice. Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
What a thoughtful and wonderful way to really build up your community and encourage people to make music and continue to make music. I'm guessing there's a lot of feedback that happens at listening parties. Is there, in your opinion, a good way to give great feedback? And it's kind of a two-part question. How does somebody take feedback that, might cut us to our core when it comes to our own work?
These are really good questions. You might have to remind me of the second part because I'll probably take a little while answering the first part.
All right.
First of all, I'll speak to the nature of our events. Oftentimes when new producers are coming in, they email us or message us on Facebook, and they're like, "Hey, how does criticism work? How are things ranked?" It's like, no. We're not critiquing anything. You just come, your music gets played. We have a keynote speaker, and then you meet each other. The critique and the criticism is all informal, peer-to-peer networking. So this jumps right into how to give critiques, because to me that's more powerful than a hierarchical kind of gatekeeperish system where it feels like maybe a reality show of like, you know what, you got a 7.9, but like you really need to work on the release time on your snare drums, okay? So try harder next time. That's not what we're about at all. Yeah. This is about getting together and actually like supporting and cheering each other on, you know? And we found that all these people need to do is meet each other, and all of a sudden they're not a producer alone with their laptop for weeks on end in their apartment or wherever they are in their studio, in their basement, wherever they're doing it. All of a sudden they're not alone. And as soon as most people realize they're not alone, they're already talking to each other. They're off to the races. And it's in a much more positive and constructive way than if it was kind of like, show us your beat. You know what I mean? And I've just seen people accelerate like you wouldn't believe, and connections being made. So how to give critiques if you were in that position. One, I think it's just a lot like consent. It's like, ask, hey, would you like feedback? And if someone says no, then you're like, okay, cool. If you ever want some, come talk to me. This is my name. This is who I am. I'm over here. I'm sitting over here with my other two friends. You should come meet them, and have a great night. I hope you bring in tracking next time. Yeah. And if someone says yes, then you say, cool. I could give you something specific, like, hey, I loved your kick drum, but I wanted to hear your snare punch me in the face a little bit more, and that's just me. You know, or you could go into detail and ask. What we're finding happens is that these little pods of people develop. You know, people get up, the producer always gets up and stands in the middle of the room to hear their track played. And you get like friends and other people coming to talk to them around them. And the feedback just happens naturally. Yeah. So those, I think, tend to be a little more in-depth. And then people tend to pair off or trio off or form little groups. And the feedback gets more in depth after that. I found my production partner out of Groundwerk, and we send each other, I think, almost like 95% of what we're working on. We send back and forth, and we ask each other, like, do you want notes on this? What kind of notes? Do you want mixed notes? Do you want arrangement notes? Do you want like what do you want? And we only give what the other person wants, because sometimes we're like, I know you're not going to like this, but I like this, and I only want notes on the hi-hat.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I really like that. I really like that, because I know sometimes when I'm looking for feedback, sometimes I'm getting like really great information, and other times it's kind of like reading a bunch of self-help books. Like you can't just follow every single one. You got to kind of pick and choose. Does this work for me at this point in time? That sounds so wonderful.
So when I get a lot of people now, as you do, I get a lot of people sending me stuff to put ears on, much of which I can listen to, some of which I'm so sorry, I just do not have the time, and I have to work on my own music as well. But I try and listen to as much as I can, and I'm always sensitive to ask people what they want out of me listening. Like, do you just want me to go, hey, yeah, good track, or do you want me to really talk about where I think you can go further, or are you looking for something really specific? When I send stuff to Chris, the GOAT, my production partner and DJ partner, we're friends. When I send stuff to him, I'll ask for really specific feedback. I'll be like, I'm happy with this, I'm happy with this, I'm happy with this. Does this need to go up 2 dB? That kind of a thing. Yeah. Do you think I can, should I play with the filter cutoff a little more at minute 2:30 or whatever? That's kind of where we're at.
Oh, I love that you mentioned the GOAT, because I'm totally going to interview him too.
Good. He's an incredible human being.
Yes.
Yeah. I have nothing bad to say. He's become, in 3 years, a little over 3 years, he's become my production partner, my DJ partner, and one of my best friends. Yeah. That's awesome. So this is the power. This is the power of just creating space.
Yes.
Because this is one example right? This is one example. Like, here's the most direct example for me. But my idols and inspirations musically used to be big name DJs and big name producers, and still are, and nothing wrong with that. But my most direct inspirations now musically are all the people around me.
Yes.
Because I know them now.
Yeah.
And they know me. And now I see that happening with them without me. So it's like mission accomplished, you know?
It's so incredibly powerful. Stepping into that conversation about community, in your opinion, how important is it to build a community around you, especially, in making music? And how can people create that community within their own brand, or even if they're brand spanking new to a city like you were, starting from the ground up, or maybe they've been around for like quite some time, but they're like, all right, this city needs some community power going on.
Sure. Yeah, I've thought about this a bit, and I've listened to a lot of people talk about it. You mentioned the Base Coast panel. That was a good one for inspiration. It's very similar tone. We've done 3 now. 3. This year was our 3rd Base Coast. And we've drawn a lot of inspiration from that. And a lot of our keynote speakers, because we've had 30 keynote speakers as well. I think the first thing to do is actually a mindset adjustment. I'm really, really fortunate to have fallen into, on my move back here. I did it before in my life, but I really fell into it heavily moving back here again. Was a whole other community, was the improv comedy community, because I'm also an actor and an improv performer and instructor. And it's a bit of a, it's going from an I to a we mindset. And we're all somewhere on that spectrum. But it's just maybe, really looking at what am I about and who am I for? And if a lot of those answers are me, I, there's nothing wrong with having some me, I have goals. I have things I'm going to do for me. But the more you can serve others, and the more you can try and create happiness for others and around you, I think that is a really broad way of looking at that shift. And really it's going from I to we, and trying to implement that as much as you can in your life. The way to do that, the way to activate that in yourself, is to look around you and go, how can I help? What can I offer that will add here? And sometimes there's no room, but quite often you can find room. I would advise people who maybe are new or are struggling or are not finding they're getting, they're not doing the things they'd like to be doing, is to find the places they'd like to be, or the people they'd like to work with or look up to, or the crew's already doing things, and show up, buy a ticket, and be out and be friendly and be social. And if you're, I say this at every single Groundwerk meetup, all 30 of them, and I always repeat it because there's always new people. Is that if you're a severe introvert and you have, you're shaking just at the thought of, meeting new people. And I'm actually a socialized introvert. I'm talking a lot, but I am an introvert. Every bit of stimulus I encounter drops my energy meter like walking on lava in Zelda. You know what I mean? And I have to go recharge. I just happen to be trained to talk. So I understand the cost, the emotional labor of that. I always just say to people, just meet one other person. If you've done that, you've done well tonight. So that's the way I look at that. If you're someone who's looking to get in, what not to do, don't come into a scene with, like, I'm the best thing that's ever happened. You really need to put me on. I did it. I. Get to know people, take some time, be patient, show up. Show people what you're about and let them get a chance to know who you are through your actions and how you conduct yourself around other people. And that the cream rises to the top in those situations.
I like that. I love that. Oh, so beautifully said.
I try to only work with people who are kind of on the same mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know, like for me, working with people like that, like it's inspiring, it's encouraging, it like makes you want to do more in your own shindig. I know actually dude Mark Grimace, he moved out here and he like totally embodies that
Right.
that mindset, and you see how far he's come as a brand new person in our local scene because of
Right.
having that kind of mindset and attitude. So
I'd love to meet him.
yeah. Oh, yeah, you love him. He's great. So something you actually mentioned
Uh-huh.
and that I learned about you is that you're an actor,
Yep.
improviser, and instructor. So how
Yep.
does this come into play for the music side of things, or does it?
Yes, actually, again, on moving back to Vancouver 6 years ago, I kind of, I, I've often felt like a bit of a generalist, and I think that's maybe why it's maybe taking me longer to get to where I would really love to be musically, because I'm doing so many things, and I'm not satisfied doing just one thing.
Yeah.
I need to do a few things, and I need to jump from one to another, projects to creative things to all of it. And I struggle. Actually, really had a bit of a kind of a not identity crisis, but like a taking stock moment when I got back to Vancouver, and I was like, look, I'm doing all these things, and I feel like I'm doing one at the cost of the other, and it was about 4 or 5 things at that point. And I was like, what can I cut? What am I? And then I what I did, and I actually think this is another really valuable thing you can load in is just like a zoom out. Okay, so like this is me, like, what do I do? What do I do? I don't have enough time. My energy's all this, and then it's like, oh, big picture. Okay, and that's I realized that I'm an artist. I have the makeup, the psychology, the emotional sensitivity, and the tempestuous head in the clouds of an artist. And all of these things are just the different colors. So I decided to double down and commit to that life. Remind me where the question was, because my artist brain went right off into the clouds.
Oh, no worries. Just how being an actor, improviser, and instructor has played its role in music, or hasn't.
Yep. So with performing improv, that's a big one. Improv and DJing and music, or anything where you're dealing with being on stage and giving something creative to a group of people, is all energy work, right? We think we're playing music, but really we're at its best, we are like lightning rods for emotional sensitivity. Like we pick up on everything. We read a room. We know who's what mood at least 15 or 20 of the patrons are in our field of vision. We know what tone the whole room has as a whole. We know how happy, sad, morose, angry the room is. We know how sober or not they are. And you guide and work with that energy. And I do that as an improviser with laughter, and I do that as a DJ with people putting their heads down and dancing hard, or cheers, or whatever that moment is. That release, because that's what really it's all about, is tension and release. And so when I did that big zoom out and realized it was all the same, that was a big moment. That allowed me to jump from one to the other almost seamlessly, because I realized I'm doing the exact same thing. It's just like someone who can speak 5 languages. You're just thinking that way. And that was a big freedom for me. The biggest thing I take away from improv, and I bring it into especially the listening parties, because I'm hosting and the moderating things like the panel talks at AimCon, things like Bass Coast, is the 2 greatest operational skills that you build into your body from improv are yes and, which is always taking what's offered and building on it, accepting it and building on it, instead of rejecting it, no butting it, or shutting it down. So you always accept what is and move forward. You become solution oriented. And the other one is listening, because if you don't listen to what's being offered and you only go with your idea, you miss everything. And so I've started getting to the point where when I'm hosting or moderating, I almost have no notes. I have some jump off points, and then I just go from what's showing up in front of me. So I do bring that over into the music side of things. And it's also taught me listening as a DJ. And when I get back to emotional listening, if you like, it's almost the same thing. Am I present? Am I in conversation? Is what I'm offering forth in response to what's here? Am I paying attention? Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. I'm like sitting here, like, as I'm hearing you say all of this, I'm like, I'm going to have to re-watch this. Take some more notes.
Thank you.
Because I'm taking it in, and then I know there's going to be other things. I'm going to have to watch it again.
I'm also like, this may sound awesome, but this is like, if I'm talking like this and this is inspired, this is like me at my best. I have my worst moments. I have my moments where I'm not on. I have my moments where I'm off. And I have my moments where I miss the mark. I have my moments where I fail. We all do. So take that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Relatable. I wanted to chat on some of the really cool things that you've had success with.
Sure.
You've had a presence at TEDx, Car Free Day, Mural Fest, Base Coast, and are hosting a second stage for Monster Cat Compound.
Yeah, that's been interesting and fun and awesome.
Yeah. Can you tell us about some of these experiences and how they've come to be, how they've unfolded?
I think we were lucky to have some decent press right at launch with things like Thump out of Vice, RIP, and some local coverage in the Georgia Strait, and people believing in what we were doing because we were doing something community minded and very much telling that story. So we were very lucky to be embraced in that way, and that gave us a lot of opportunities. My other co-founders were also very connected here, and so as soon as they put the word out about a new project and we started to tell the story and reveal what it was, it got to a lot of people very quickly. So we've been a part of a lot of kind of community-minded and creative events. We're very lucky to have a booth at TEDx in our first year, which was great. We learned that dub techno has a whole other demographic that you wouldn't even think, which was just fantastic. And then, yes, things like Car Free Day, things like the old Oasis Lounge at Mural Fest. I don't know, it was 2 or 3 years ago. And then that's kind of all spawned into the offshoot, which my other co-founder, Nick Collinet, has begun and is growing really successfully, called Public Disco, which is putting kind of dance music and happy dance music back into the public space, to kind of make it okay again in a city that's very kind of rule oriented and sometimes a little bit quiet. Can experience its share of NIMBYism, kind of making room again in the public square to make noise and let loose in a very positive way. So we've been very lucky to do a lot of these kind of community-minded events, and things like Car Free Days. That's just kind of things we can get behind. And these have been really great for interacting with the public and a certain amount of exposure and brand presence. This year we pulled back a little bit because all of us, we'd done so much in 3 years that we kind of needed a year to just maintain. And Groundwerk is evolving. Nick took on Public Disco. Steph is helping him a lot with that. So it's kind of it's a bit of a what's next thing. And now you're seeing things like Music BC getting us to partner with Monster Cat to do their second stage for their big compound event here in Vancouver, which is a real incredible blessing for us. And we get to program, this wonderful, lovely local regional talent that we've been working with for 3 years, and also have there's a contest coming that's going to launch soon. I can't talk about. Yeah, all kinds of things. So it keeps slowly. This is another piece of advice to anyone getting into it. It's slow and it's incremental, and it's slowly, suddenly.
Yes.
So you gotta have the patience for the slowly, I think. I'm pretty excited for what is coming this year. There's some things that will be coming that are not launched yet. It's been building very nicely. I'll put it that way.
It's like, I love that, there's all this hype being built up and you're like, okay, it's going to happen, but I can't tell you about it. Yeah, I kind of almost love that better than like just being told this thing is coming in 14 months.
Yeah, right.
Like let's just launch it when it's ready. And everything's been.
Vancouver's a very last minute city too. So it kind of works to do it that way.
All right.
Maybe we're a product of our environment in that sense, but it seems to work. One thing I'm really excited about, which I actually, I'm just excited at creating possibility there, is finally going to ADE in Amsterdam for the first time for me this October. And already have, might have some, just excited for what possibilities. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah. To see where this can go and to get inspiration from people who are doing it at another level in a bigger way. And hopefully find a way to get involved at some point. But that's the hope and the dream. Yeah.
Well, I'm
a great panel moderator.
Yeah, absolutely. It's coming. I see it.
Well, yeah, it's just like it'll happen when it needs to happen, and I'm patient that way. So there's lots of life to be full with until it happens.
You actually offered some really great advice there. I guess a little bit about patience.
Yeah.
And is there kind of like a funny, like the worst piece of advice you've been given, and maybe like what you've learned from maybe not following that advice, or maybe you followed that advice and then you're like, wasn't for me?
I think this is going to be a little roundabout.
Okay.
I think one of the worst things you can do is listen to those people who go, you know what you should do? You know what you should do? Don't do that. Do what you know you should do.
Yeah.
Find people who you can get real excited about it and go do that, and don't listen to anybody else until it's done.
Yeah.
And do it. Don't talk about it.
Yes.
Do it.
Yes.
And see what happens after. And I need to take my own advice, because I do that about half the time. I'm going to be honest. You see the half that works out, right? So it's not all successes and great things. There's a lot of stuff that's undone. You don't see the stuff that's undone. But do it. Really, really know what you're about and stick to that, whatever that is. And don't listen to people who tell you can't. The best advice I've ever gotten in my life, and I try to incorporate it every day. I've talked about this before. I've known some really incredible, I would call them guides or masters in my life. I've been really blessed with that. And one of them shook my hand a couple years ago and said, never take anything personally ever again.
I like that.
I'm not successful at that.
Okay.
But with him saying that, it entered my consciousness to try.
Yeah.
Whereas before I hadn't even been trying.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I'm more successful at it now than I used to be. And as I experience that, my life gets better.
Right on.
So it's a continual journey to try and release and let go of taking things personally. Maybe one of the most challenging things you can do, but also one of the most rewarding.
Yeah, every once in a while I hear people give, that advice, like, oh, I just stopped letting stress bug me. And I'm like, okay, so where did you buy that button? Because this is a process.
Yeah.
It takes time. But yeah, once you can let go of the outcome, let go of those situations, it's pretty powerful.
You know what? The worst, I just popped in my head, the worst advice is just go doing something inauthentic. Go buy likes and followers, or go and get such and such a person to produce tracks for you, or go and do that. That is the worst advice. Being authentic and creating authentic relationships based on who you are. And they're not going to be the same for everybody. It's not always the same people. What might resonate for one person or work for them may not work for you because you're just not the same people. Yeah. But finding out what does resonate for you, music is all about resonance. Finding what does resonate for you and being authentic to that and building relationships from that. That's the key.
I really like that. It's like doing your authentic self, both in your branding and your sound and your friendships and the business relationships, right? So yeah, I really love that. So to end this beautiful interview, which has been so impactful, can you tell us about any upcoming projects?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
I just sent off a couple of tracks that will be coming out at some point. I've got a single coming out on a compilation for Coete Recordings out of Toronto, which is a newish label from my friend Raul Vargas in Toronto. I'm really excited about that track. I've road tested it. I Instagram storied about it. It went off at Leave Us Lost party here in Vancouver, which are incredible daytime and nighttime parties. Big plug to Leave Us Lost. Check them out if you're ever in Vancouver, and maybe they'll get out of Vancouver at some point. So that I have a bunch of gigs coming up in August and getting into September here in and around Vancouver, which is great. Hoping to get out, starting to go a little east over this year. We'll see what can happen. I'd love to come to Calgary. I'd love to come further east. I'd love to come to Winnipeg. If there's an opportunity to come to Winnipeg, I'd be there in a heartbeat. I'd love to come. So there's that. I just did it. You know what was funny? A friend of mine who was here is from India, and he's back in India now, and works under Viridian Music. And he sent me some stems, and he's like, "You want to make a remix for this track?" I said, "It's beautiful. I'd love to." It's very melodic. It's just like beautifully. And I was like, "I know exactly what I want to do to this.
Yeah.
I want to go up like 4 BPM and just like strip it down and just do that." And that's what I did. And I sent it back to him, and he's like, I don't know how you make such captivating music with so few elements. I was like, that is actually the best compliment you could give me. And then he's like, yeah, we scrapped the original and we just want to put this out as a collab. So I was like, great, can we get it out before ADE? And he's like, we are going to try. So that's coming out. I have so much. I have an admission to make here on the Kilma show.
Yeah.
I've been artistically hiding. Okay. I've been writing music and not sending the emails. Mm-hmm. I've been like talking the talk and not walking the walk. So the walk is starting to happen, and I have a lot of music that I'm sitting on that's going to start to try and find homes for. I'm hoping ADE is a really big help with that. And I'm really excited about it, and I'm walking further and further into the techno space, and my BPMs seem to be creeping up, and there seems to be more and more distortion slowly entering what I'm doing, and I'm wearing a lot more black. So that seems to be what's happening. So look out for more music, I would say, over the next 12 months, especially. And who knows what that brings for next year. Yeah. So I'm in a new place. As you go artistically, there's those loops, right? If you're an entrepreneur or whatever, you just like the ramp up, the excitement, and then there's like a return to that. Then hopefully your next loop starts a little higher up and loops again. And I'm at one of those places of renewal and possibility and excitement ramping up again. So I kind of don't know exactly what it's going to be yet, but something's coming. I'll leave it that way.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it, because there's a lot of talk going on around you and the projects that you've got going on. So when you agreed to the interview, I was like, oh my God,
thank you.
It's going to be a match.
Oh, come on.
So I'm super excited for you. I feel like there's going to be so many amazing things to come, and we'll have to interview you again and see how things are going. But thank you so much for sitting down with me today. And
it's been a pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
Awesome. All right. So thank you everybody for joining us. If there are some awesome DJs out there that you'd like to see me interview, you'll have to tag them and tell them they gotta come on the show. Until next time, don't let no one kill your vibe.